By now, you know that ultra-processed foods are harmful, addictive, and generate chronic disease. However, you can't stop eating them. These products have completely taken over the shelves of supermarkets and your pantry. When they explain why they are not a good option, the discourse usually focuses on their high caloric content and poor quality ingredients. However, ultra-processed foods are even more harmful than previously believed. Let me explain the primary reason, which is unrelated to their calorie content, fiber levels, or hyperpalatability. Consuming ultra-processed foods disrupts the body's natural processes during eating. You're eating predigested food? What does this mean? What are we referring to? You might think that to make an ultra-processed product, you take all the ingredients on the label, combine them through industrial procedures, and that's it. It's not an additive process, but instead works differently. At least not in most products. Do you know what slurries are? In the food industry, slurries are semi-liquid suspensions formed by finely ground solid particles, a kind of mush. Those solid particles are the molecular constituents of raw materials, for example, corn or wheat. To put it in perspective, to make a surimi slurry, they take and grind the fish, which is mixed with additives, salt, sugars, and vegetable oils, so that you can finally enjoy your crab sticks and other seafood imitators. So, what you're putting in your mouth is something that doesn't even remotely resemble the raw material and certainly doesn't have its characteristics. You see, the main defining characteristic of an ultra-processed food is its degree of processing. They are products that, even if you wanted to, you couldn't make at home. Why? For the simple reason that industrial procedures are required to add the plethora of ingredients that characterize them, and also to process those ingredients. At home, you can't subject corn to an extrusion or hydrolysis process. And not only that, add them in the exact proportions. And not only that, add them with the desired intentionality. Increase palatability, preservation time, texture, color, etc. And not only that, they are usually totally confidential, patented formulas. Even if you had all the ingredients and machinery, you wouldn't know the recipe. Returning to the central topic of predigestion, your physiology has evolved over millions of years in a way that has provided you with a digestive system with specific functions. Among those functions is to mechanically and chemically process food, digest it, which is basically breaking bonds and making the molecules smaller and smaller, and finally absorb them to make them available to your cells. This process, when it occurs completely naturally, generates the release of a series of gastrointestinal hormones. Hormones that regulate insulin sensitivity, production, and satiety, which controls feelings of fullness from food. What happens when the industry does that work for your digestive tube by providing foods that practically require no type of digestion? You lose healthy digestive hormones, chewing, nutrients, and antioxidants while gaining hyperstimulating sensory signals. They have made you think that the only thing that matters are calories, fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. But they have forgotten to explain all this to us that we see in today's video. An ultra-processed food that has exactly the same calories and exactly the same macronutrients as an apple will have a radically different impact on your body than an apple. You know, you are certain that what you are putting in your mouth is harmful. But you keep doing it. Why? When you base your diet on ultra-processed foods, you behave in a different way. You're going to start eating more and making worse food decisions throughout the day. Ultra-processed foods plant the seed for you to keep eating them, if we want to put it that way. They create a consumption habit, just like mobile phones. Obviously, this is a dose-dependent effect. We're talking about basing your diet on ultra-processed foods, not about eating one on Saturday night. There is compelling evidence of this. The review by Contreras Rodriguez suggests that ultra-processed foods can alter serotonergic and dopaminergic neurotransmission in the brain, thus promoting the automatic consumption of food and the choice of unhealthy foods. They also make you eat more. Participants in this study consumed on average about 500 more daily calories when their diet was based on ultra-processed foods, compared to when their diet was based on unprocessed foods. Ultra-processed foods have two interpretations. They can increase the risk of obesity and metabolic issues, but they also displace the consumption of protective foods that reduce chronic disease risk, such as fruits, vegetables, legumes, seeds, whole grains, and quality protein sources. Look at the ingredient list of this Oreo McFlurry. Do you know them all? Do you know how they affect you? Although we tend to trust the food industry and regulatory bodies in terms of food safety, the truth is that over time, many additives have come under scrutiny for their potential relationship with health problems. Let me give you several examples. Azo dyes, such as tartrazine and sunset yellow, have been associated with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder in children. Emulsifiers, such as monoglycerides or carboxymethyl cellulose, have been linked to gut imbalance, inflammation, and higher cardiovascular risk. Short-term product safety doesn't guarantee long-term health benefits. Regulatory agencies primarily ensure the former, not the latter. We would never let a child smoke tobacco, vape, or use a hookah, but we don't hesitate to give them pastries or chicken nuggets every day. 15 years ago, there was very little scientific evidence about the impact of ultra-processed foods on health, but today they have been linked to a higher incidence of cancer, depression and anxiety, insulin resistance and obesity, higher mortality from cardiovascular disease, and many other chronic diseases. However, we continue to buy and eat them every day. Why? Because they have made us dependent on them, because the offer is huge and they are everywhere, because they have become much cheaper while healthy products are becoming more expensive, and because we cover our emotional miseries with the shot of pleasure and dopamine that eating those baked potatoes gives us every night. It's a massive experiment with initially unknown consequences that we are now beginning to glimpse. The main one is the rise of chronic disease. And finally, remember this. You live in a society where it is normal to feed on this that we have explained. It's the norm, it's the most common, and it has huge social costs. If you consume this channel regularly, you probably don't identify with this, but those of us who actively take care of our health are still a minority. Share this video with loved ones if you found it helpful. See you next time. Thanks for your support, attention, and subscription. A big hug and keep on empowering.